Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for your patience. We are ready to start the webinar today. The webinar is Contract Training Trends Report for 2013, and we're very happy to have Julia King-Tamang of LERN with us today. And my name is Chris Murphy. I'm with Augisoft, and today's webinar is being brought to you by Augisoft. And before we get going, just wanted to let you know about a couple of just basic guidelines. We will be showing a couple of polling questions that will be displayed on your screen. We also are recording the webinar today, and we'll provide a link to the recording as well as the slides that Julia presents here today on our website. And if you have any questions for Julia, please submit those to the questions toolbar on the right-hand side of your screen, and we'll leave a little time at the end for questions. So with that, let's get going, and I'll turn things over to Julia. So welcome, Julia.
Thank you, Chris. Good morning, everybody. And again, I also apologize for the little technical difficulty on my end. This is one of my favorite webinars of the year, Contract Training Trends Report for 2013. This trends report tells us what happened in 2012, what's predicted by some of the trending companies that write papers and do research and that sort of thing, and what we should be preparing in contract training to be caught up with everything that happens. So let's look at trainingindustry.com's report. Now, they were saying last year that the annual market would grow by only about 2%, and that's about what we at LERN were saying too. We might have been slightly more optimistic, but pretty much everybody was saying right in that range of 2 to 5%. And now what they were saying is at the end of the year, we're looking back, and the corporate spending for training went up as much as 6 or 7%. So it's a little bit better than pretty much everybody thought it was going to be. And I thought it was actually a little higher than 7%, but it depends on whose reports you read. Bears and Associates, one of my favorite groups to read research from, also said that after double-digit cuts in 08, 09, and 10, we started to see a real turnaround for learning and development organizations. Now, when they're talking about learning and development organizations, they're talking about organizations that do training for a living. So in 2011, learning and development organizations continued to kind of, get their losses back. Their budgets went up 9.5%, or about $800 per learner. That's pretty good, I think. That $800 for most people would mean that they were increasing their classes by 1 or 2 per learner. And then also what happened, and I think this has always been, in the time that I've been with LERN, this has been a really good predictor of growth in training, and that's that learning and development organizations continue to grow their training staff. And staffing was up on the Bears and report, which is quite reliable, about 7%. So really, it's looking pretty good. Learning spending up 7.5%. If you want to see it in a graph, so you can kind of see, there we are, 06, 07, we're kind of poking along, and then boom, the bottom drops out in 08, 09. Grew a tiny bit in 10, a tiny bit in 11. This particular chart doesn't have 12 on it, but it grew just a little bit more. It was looking good. And so I'm feeling more optimistic than I was a couple of years ago. What we're seeing is that learning is happening, but actual hours per person of learning are slightly down. On the average, employees clocked about 31 hours of training in 11, which was 1 hour less than 10. So their actual numbers of hours in the classroom per learner went down, and significantly since 2007, where it was 37 hours, so dropped 6% in those years. But it's still, even the worst numbers there, 5 more per employee than we were using 10 years ago. So it's not looking bad if you back up the data far enough. Here's a number I always watch also, and that's outsourcing, because we are the organizations that learning and development organizations outsource to. And I was saying in 08, 09, around in there, that outsourcing was up about 30%, and in particular, the outsourcing of the creation of content. And I was telling you, get your staff committed and able to create content for your contract training units. Well, that same thing is still going. So the market in outsourcing is up 10% from last year, and that's looking good, and my prediction is that's going to continue to grow. That means that you need a bevy of people who will make content for you, content curators or instructional design professionals. Now, the number of hours per learning per employee has gone up a little bit, down a little bit, but the cost of learning per individual has increased. And so what we're seeing is no surprise to you and I being on our end of the business, and that's that learning has increased by about $10 each year for the past 4 years. In 2011, there was an 18% increase to about $85 per learning hour. That's kind of what we were talking about then, and that's just gone up, inched up just a little bit. So, Chris, I wonder if we could stop now and ask people, are we at the right place in the slide set to ask people whether their trading has gone up, down, or stayed the same in the last year?
Sure. Let's get the question up on the screen, and so everybody, you should now see the first polling question, which is, was your training up in 2012, or was it about the same as 2011?
One of the reasons that we track this, of course, is that our business is very regional. So when it's up in Saskatchewan, it might be down in Vancouver. When it's up in Boston, it might be down in Austin. And so we like to ask this question every year and just kind of see. We've got a pretty good mix in the room here today, and so we just want to know what's going on for you guys.
Great. Let's get the results up here. So kind of about 44% said that they're up, about 44% are about the same, and only 12% were down. So overall, it looks like pretty good numbers.
Yeah, and that's kind of mirroring what we said in those first opening slides. I thought the most interesting thing in the trends report this year was some new vocabulary that we should be talking about. We launched this slide set in Washington, D.C., so I got George here talking to you. These are some cocktail party words that you should know in contract training this year. The first one that you should know is the era of personal learning. So what's really important right now is how the learners take their own control of getting the information they need, where they want it, how they want it, when they want it, and so forth. And so this is instead of the teacher, the instructional systems design professional, controlling the learner. What we're talking about when we're talking about learning personalization things, what should we be doing to help learners get what they want, where they want, when they want it, is we should focus on content that's new or changed. Now, there's so much information right now. You use computers, you're on the web all day, you know this. We're all overloaded with information. And really, so what we're doing is we're focusing only more on what's new or what's changed in order for me to get my job done. So we're skipping content that they already know. And we want to make it possible in our classes for people to whiz by right through Units 1 and 2 if that's material they know, not have to slog through something they know how to do. We also then want to minimize the content in courses that they can look up online. And so we could say that's in your manual, you can find that online, and not go through that in class. We also want to learn at a time and place that's optimal, and that has a lot to do with a person's job title and what it is that they do. So many people need just-in-time information. That is, right now, I'm a nurse, I need to prescribe something, and I need to know the doses. I need to learn on the fly like that, be able to look it up right now. We want to also be sure that our learners can access any devices, use any devices to access digital content. So that means for most of us, smartphones, iPads, laptops, that sort of thing. And then also, we want to be able to have learners get access so that they can understand the context that the knowledge gets in, access to expertise so that they can understand the context that the knowledge is in, and also they can get mentoring from those people. So somehow we need a way to have junior employee talk to senior employee. So now this means that the role of those people who design classes has changed a little bit in the last year, or it's actually been kind of going on for 5 or 6 years. But what is their role now? It's shifting a little bit, and I think it would be good for you to be talking to your instructors about this. One thing that we want our teachers and our instructional systems design pros, the people who build our classes, to be doing is to be managing communities of practice. We want them to be managing groups of people who need similar knowledge on similar schedule and helping those people have discussions. We also want them to be curating content, and what I mean by that is we want people to be saying what's important and what's not important for learning. And of course that's different. Change management in one company and change management in another company, not the same thing. Our new ISD pros should be facilitating online discussion groups, organizing learning events, and they should also now be getting smart about social media for learning. So this is a lot of change in the instructional systems design, a lot of change for your teachers for what they do. And if your teachers are still just designing handouts and standing up in front of people, they are not up to date in the new way of the era of personal learning. The other thing we'd like our ISD people to do, because the way that we learn, not only what we're learning, but how we learn it, is so changed from what it was before, we really want these people to champion changes in learning to upper management. We can't expect people in your position to know all the things that are changing in instructional systems design, so we leave it to the pros, and they make those requests to the people at the top for us. All right, another new word that you should know is backchannel. I'm so excited about backchannel learning. Backchannel learning is the informal social learning that happens on people's iPads, smartphones, etc. during classes and during other events. So for example, I was at the LERN conference. A ton of people had tablets, iPads, and other things with them. And they were, while the speaker's speaking, going online, checking out the facts, talking to other people on social media. I think this is very good. Now, some teachers will say, I don't want that in my classroom because I can't control it. What if they're surfing the web, watching cartoons? And they might be. But it's the same old thing it's always been. If the class is good enough, the students will participate. This is one of the most exciting things in not just vocabulary, but concept this year, and that's flipped learning. Flipped learning means we say to a group of learners, we want you to do this homework and then come to class. So we'll be starting the class by talking about this homework. So instead of, obviously, homework after the class, or we're going to have this discussion, and now I'm going to lecture you. The reason flipped learning is important is because the learners are telling us then, how is this thing that we're teaching relevant to their experience? So if they've done their homework before class, they're coming back saying, I tried these change management techniques, and I have a preference for this one, and here's the reason why. So you see how flipped learning increases the relevancy. I think this is going to be a big thing that we'll be talking about for a long time. Now, this won't affect all of you, but some of those of you who do manufacturing training or who use simulations and that sort of thing, gamification is really just taking the classroom experience and turning it into a game. It's just huge. But I won't spend a lot of time on it because it applies to some of you and it doesn't apply to others of you. And if it applies to you, you've probably got your eye on it these last 5 years. All right, there's new blended learning. So we used to say blended learning was a stand-up class with some homework, or an online class with a little bit of face-to-face in it. And now what we're saying, it could be more strategies than that. So learning through a community of practice, or blended learning could be face-to-face and then a little something on my smartphone on the way home, that kind of thing. This is another really exciting word, and I'm seeing this at conferences mostly, and that's real-time content. Real-time content means, for example, let's say you have a conference or that sort of an event, a gathering of your clients, and you will actually not build a session. You will fill the room with 2, 1, 5, 10 experts, and then your clients will do activities to pull the expertise out of those people so that the content of the session is actually built by the attendees. I think that's exciting. I've been to a couple of those in conferences this year, lots of fun. The 70-20-10 model is that 70% of learning about a job is through practice and on-the-job exercises, 20 is through other people, coaching and that sort of thing, and 10% is through face-to-face. So this is really almost flipped. We used to say, 10, 20, 70. Now we're saying 70, 20, 10. So what else is new in contract training? Let's look at some trends. These are shared now. I'm going to start with trends shared by Canada and the United States. The first one is tablet sales are through the roof all over North America. And of course that means we're going to need to be integrating the use of tablets into the classroom, at least have things that people can do with their tablets. I can't wait for the day when your handouts are produced for tablets rather than on paper. Isn't that going to save you a lot of money and time? All right, we also see that throughout North America, business spending on social media marketing is up quite a bit. The kind of ballpark number that people are giving is 10%. And then we know that networks, wireless, and cloud computing are all on the increase. I think that you should be teaching your clients, if they don't know already, how to use cloud computing, how to maximize it, to increase their effectiveness and efficiency of business, that you should get on that and start teaching them how to use the cloud for that. Another thing that I saw in research, now this actually was trending in Canada before it was trending in the United States, and that's that social responsibility matters to customers. And what I mean by that is that they care how a company, you know, the morality of the company. And so we've known that since maybe the 70s, maybe a little bit before that, that people would say, well, I won't buy from that company because whatever, they have bad environmental practices. And I'm just saying that right now this is stronger than it's ever been. And people are organizing around this, and companies are starting to feel the pain of people not buying their products because they're not socially responsible. And I think we could do a little programming around that. All right, now I talked about customer service last year and said it was hot. You should be doing it if you weren't, and it's just gotten stronger and stronger this year. It's one of the least expensive ways for a company to create a leading edge, small towns, big cities everywhere. So customer service training, you should be prepped and ready to go. And then also, I've been talking for the last 3 years about leadership being key, and I want to just say that it continues to be a key thing to train. All right, Chief Learning Officer, which is a great magazine. If you don't read it, I suggest you take a look at it in your school's library. Talked about 5 trends that continue to rise to the top. One is integrated solutions. So, for example, if you use a piece of software to run your contract training unit, like AuguSoft, and that was my little free ad for AuguSoft there, and that software integrates your writing, it integrates your records, it integrates, you know, client records, that sort of thing. That's a trend all over business. Education is not the only place that that's happening, and so we need to be aware in the industries you serve, what are those integrated solutions? Then also I talked about social media, and this is not just social media to say how do you do, this is social media for informal learning and for mobile learning. And if you want to hear some more about this, I would watch the work of Heather Dimmitt at LERN, because she's been researching the use of social media for teaching and learning for 2 or 3 years now. And then the importance of a progressive cloud model, probably you've read about that, you know what it means, and then also the evolution of a global understanding in learning content. And what I mean by that is so many of the companies that we work with are either doing business globally or their business is affected by something that's happening globally. And so we need to be conduits of information for our clients about that. Actually, I just talked about all of those. I forgot that there was more than just the trend slide, so I'm going to skip them and go up to the ZDNet Talks Trends. Now, normally I don't put this much information on slides, but I know that many of you you'll get these slides in your email box after the webinar today, and it'll be downloaded to you, and then I know that many of you will turn around and show it to your staff. So I've left enough information on these slides so that you would have a sense of what a slide means if I'm not in the room. Oh, it's ZDNet Talks Trends, and I always read their research for the year and their end-of-year research. And one of the things that they're saying is that we were seeing more independent workers than ever before. And so what we're looking at is low-cost training to train people maybe who work, it would be in our business, for example, like adjunct faculty. So they're tied to the organization, but not in the way that they used to be tied to the organization. And so the training for those people is generally less and a little bit less expensive, and almost always needs to be just-in-time training so they can access it from home or wherever they work. Also, we see that more people are working online and working from home. LERN predicted this about 7 or 8 years ago. We blew up our corporate offices, we like to say, and told consultants they could, and staff people, that they could live wherever they wanted and work from wherever they wanted. And we're finding that working online and learning online is really great. Interactive webinars, as we're seeing today, can reach a wide audience for a super low cost. And if you couldn't sit in on this webinar today, you could have just waited for the slides and audio to download to your email box. It's really proving to be a fantastic way of learning when you have large audiences and you want to be sure they're all getting the same thing. All right, co-working. What I mean by co-working is teamwork. And we're not just talking teamwork now, but we're talking teamwork in virtual teams, people who do not reside in the same place. And so as educators, we need to be aware of what the tools are for that. I think you might want to have some classes in that, team building in a virtual environment. And then lifelong learning. And aren't you glad to see that this is starting to be a trend again? It was big in the 90s. It fell away just a little bit. And what we're saying is lifelong learning, but it's looking a little different now. It doesn't necessarily mean going to class. It means using wikis, which are like encyclopedias online. It means using online universities, social networking learning circles, and that sort of thing. So we want our clients to see us as the purveyors of continuous lifelong learning, and not so much leisure learning, but it could for sure include things like how to stay healthy and well in the workplace, that sort of thing. All right, another thing that I've been tracking, and if you've been to LERN conference, you see that I've done a session every year on it, and it's been jam-packed session every single year, and that's talent acquisition. And the thing that's new in talent acquisition, so if you're not familiar with the phrase, it means the hiring process, the training process, the onboarding process, the development process of employees. And what's new in that this year is that there's a very imbalanced global workforce. And so we're saying we've got to get employees in the right places where the work is happening. And that's really what we're finding is, you know, we've got a business and it opens up a site somewhere, and while the home office had plenty of workers, the new site doesn't have the needed engineers or manufacturing frontline people or whatever it is. And so just what we're doing is we're saying we have to figure out ways when we go around the world and open these businesses for assessing whether or not we have the right people for the job, simulations to help train them quickly, that sort of thing, because every single employee is important when you're working in an environment where there aren't enough employees to fill the job. I think we've talked about pretty much everything on this slide. I'm going to just go ahead and go to the next one. Employee engagement. Now, I talked about this last year in the trends report, and I found that a lot of people in both Canada and the United States were unhappy in their jobs. So 2011, Mercer found out that 32% of employees were, quote, planning on leaving their employers, up just 19% 2 years ago. Now, we saw that trend in both the U.S. and Canada. This year, what we saw was 47% of the workforce will be born after 1977. So we really need to engage the needs of our workers who are under 30, because if we don't, that 32% on the top bullet there will become larger and larger, and our disenchanted, disengaged young people will be added to the disengaged older people in the workforce, and that's the last thing that we want. So I suggest that you have courses, workshops, material, consultants available to your clients to teach them how to bring the right people in, so assessments, that sort of thing. This is your testing center now becoming an arm of contract training, or at least a service of contract training, and understanding that we want to help the clients pick the right people in the first place, train those people, keep them on staff, and then they also need to know how to let them go when that's appropriate. So one of the things that we see in our business right now is that even though contract training itself has changed, the learning management systems that we're using were designed to work with credit programs long, long ago. And so what I want to say is you've got to look at the tools you use to run contract training. Look around at everybody who makes a learning management system, and above all, look for two things, I think: integrated, so that you don't have to do work twice, and also I think you should be looking for great customer service and a proven product. Who's using it? What do they say about it? And just one quick slide. I do this every year. I just am always curious about it. What about 10 years from now? So I think 10 years from now we're going to see very sophisticated gaming applications in training, just like we see for leisure gaming right now. I think we're going to be social learning taught by content experts inside organization. And I think the reason that's going to happen is that young people who are now at the entry-level part of the workforce or just beyond that will be the expert and the subject matter experts inside their companies, and they grew up on gaming. So of course they're going to want to use gaming to teach. And I think also, and this is something I've been talking about, but it's just on a fast track, is that we're going to see content created faster than ever. And the reason for this is that learners on the job now need instant access to the content. Like I said, in the healthcare situation, we can't at this point remember everything there is to know. And so what we're going to do is we're going to have ways to access the knowledge that we need, but that we couldn't remember just because there's so much knowledge to have. All right, what's hot for 2013? We do this every year. What should you be selling and getting ready to sell? Now you have to remember this, what I'm recommending is hot through the filter of your geography and your clients. So top 3 areas were managerial and supervisory training, profession or industry specific, so healthcare training, manufacturing training. That's always been the case in the last 10 years. And then processes, procedures, and business practices. No surprises there. Those 3 captured 40% of the market. If you go back and look, probably 40% of the market in your area too. About the same as last year. Any content in how work gets done, so skill building on leadership, efficiency, effectiveness, teamwork, partnering, change management, database decision making. These are all topics that we should be teaching and consulting in that teach your clients, our clients, how to work smarter, not harder, how to get more done and how to be more competitive. So you should have classes and consulting in every one of those areas in 2013. Now, one of the other people that I follow is Jane Hart, and every year she's got something fantastic to say about training. You can just Google her and read all kinds of things. But she's talking about developing smart workers. And a smart worker is a worker who understands that they're supposed to be learning and growing each second on the job. So what's the knowledge? What's my learning network? What's, what about when I work in autonomy? I'm off-site or working at home. And so we should be thinking in our company and in our learning development organizations, how are we dealing with smart workers? And generally it's through 3 tools. One is performance support tools. That would be online things, for example, back to the nurse to use in the operating room so she looks up something online. Also social collaboration, learning from others, and especially on the fly. And then professional learning, which just means continuous learning, never letting your skill set get old. So we should be talking a little bit and reading more in this next year about smart workers. And I suspect that Jane is continuing to write about this and will write about it through 2013. Now, leadership is still key in 2013. Last year in the Trends Report, I encouraged you to look at a lot of things about learning. But what we saw in the past was that when we said leadership training, we were talking about training the people at the top of the org chart. And the new twist for 2013 is we're talking about training people at the first level and the midline level of leadership also. So not quite entry-level employees, but the people who are at the top of the group of entry-level. And then mid-level managers who are the leaders in mid-level management. So not just the CEOs and the vice presidents and so on. Okay. What are the fastest growing business areas? Of course, the internet was. Alternative energy. Many of you, I've flew around to talk to you this year. Alternative energy is really big in what you do, wind and that sort of thing. Environmental consultant and biotechnology, still big, was big, has been big, will continue to be big. I think 10 years from now we won't believe how much biotechnology we're doing. Video games and outsourcing staff. These are all areas that are growing big. So you should be looking at your area and saying which of those is big in your area and do you have programs to support it. Now, this has nothing to do with contract training, but I thought that was totally fascinating, and that's that I was looking at research on the top 10 products in North America, and I thought you'd like to know hot sauce was one of the fastest growing products in North America last year. It was a fascinating little report I read. All right, how much are you using video? I hope you're using video a lot. Video in learning is your go-to tool. So you want to have knowledge video clips. So you've got a new worker and they want to know, how do I do X? You want to have a little YouTube video available for them on that or some other platform. Video and webinars. So I could have, I don't usually, but I could have shown you a video inside this webinar. Video Sage in the classroom. So for example, maybe the expert that I want to use for 20-minute segment of a training lives 2 states away, and I don't want to pay their travel, so I just pay them for the 20 minutes, and we use video, live video feed, so that the students can capture their expertise. Also, we can use video by putting video in the classroom and microphones, and we're capturing and reusing content, that sort of thing. So we're actually filming the classroom itself. And then desktop video expertise, and I've been doing a ton of that this year. Let's say, for example, Skype mentoring, Skype coaching. So this is performance support done in real time through Skype. Field trips by video. Please tell me you're going to do this year. There are some places. Let's say you run a chef's program and you would like your chefs to see another training facility somewhere and to watch a great trainer do something, but you can't afford to take them all there. You can take them by video. I love, love, love the idea of videoing frequently asked questions. So on your website, you can say, hey, the top 10 questions that people ask are here in this little video. So this would be great for recruiting for programs. Clips for the classroom, we talked about that actually a little bit here. Leadership video interviews. So one thing is we can have rising leaders, give them a video camera, have them go around, interview their peers, interview their customers, interview other leaders, and present that stuff back in your leadership classrooms. And then the last thing is video brown bags. So we just have an, maybe half an hour video that's shown over lunch to remote workers. And this is a way of making sure that all of your workers at all of your sites get the same quality of training. All right, another thing I got my eye on, and this will only be relevant to some of you, but there is an absolute explosion in 2012 on do-it-yourself health devices. Now, I think that that's going to have something to do with the fact that we have so many baby boomers. They're at the peak of their spending, many of them, and they're also on their way out. We're on our way out, period, aren't we? We're getting to that age. We can say we're on our way out, but we're on our way out of the workforce. So I would think you could throw in a class on how to use these do-it-yourself health devices and probably get some business for that. Well, what else? Just a few things. We need to get lean. So we're going to have to, as LERN always encourages you to do, but now everybody else has jumped on the bandwagon, and we're saying that we've got to trim costs so that we can price our training at a price that our clients will buy. What's the main message in 2013 that you should send to your clients? The main message is they need you. So we are adding staff in training. I said that at the beginning of today's slideshow, but the staff that we're adding in training is not keeping up with the, and when I say the staff they're adding in training, I mean the in-house staff at the companies. They're adding staff back, but it is not keeping up with the need. So the staff to learner ratios are putting pressure on training groups to find creative ways to extend their reach, including using you&I for training. You need to also tell your clients you can help them fill their skill gaps. You go out and talk to your 5 best clients, they're going to tell you they can't keep up with having qualified employees in certain areas. And you need to say in both your face-to-face meetings and in your copy in written and digital things, you can help them fill the gap. You can also tell your clients, we can help you measure how effective the training is. And at the very least, we can do pre- and post tests so we can say something about whether or not people learned when they were in the classroom. And then finally, there's a great emphasis right now out in the workplace on analytical thinkers. And I want to be sure that you are, by analytical thinking, what I'm talking about here is businesses now saying we don't just want to kind of make decisions on a gut or on intuition. We want to actually make it on analytics, on data. So now LERN's been telling you to run your business like that for, geez, 20 years almost. But because our margins are so slim, because competition is so high, because companies are really stretched thinly to make things happen coming out of the recession, analytics is really important. In fact, I would recommend that you take some time and you research analytics, what it is, and what it is in the industries or the organizations that you work for, and ask yourself the question if you should be offering certificates in analytics this year. And I think you're going to find the answer probably is yes. All right, well, I said this last year and I said it the year before, and I'm going to say it one more time, and I've said it so much you guys are telling me now that it's true, and I think you're right. Much of this year's focus will be on retention. So it's not enough to teach something in the classroom. It's got to get back to the workplace, and learners have to remember it. So make sure that there's a retention, a remembering strategy in every class that you teach. So you could have coaching, you could use collaborative tools, you could use experiential exercises. Ask your teachers, how is it that we can cause people to remember what they learned in this 3-day classroom when they go back to the workforce? All right, there's a whole slew of information on this slide. I'm certainly not going to read it to you, but the basic message is outsourcing is up. We think it's going to grow even more, and that means you should expect that this year your business is going to be bigger than it was last year. All right, last slide here. In 2012, for-profit university world is growing for-profit universities, so we want to be ready to take on the competition. We're probably still a few years out, but just know private for-profit learning is going to be your competition. So I just wanted to say one more thing, and then we're going to have questions. April 3rd and 4th in Chicago, backed by popular demand, is the Contract Training Only Conference. If you don't know about that, go to learn.org or send me an email. My email's on the end of the slide set here. I'll tell you about it. It's filling fast, so if you want to go, be sure that you go in and sign up now. It's just a short little conference, but all we talk about is contract training, and we talk about the state-of-the-art, what's there. We're going to have Greg Sertman, who's a $1 million salesperson, come in and talk to us. What are his little sales tips that he's got? I'm real excited about seeing Greg. He's a very nice guy, very, very high performer. All right, Chris, do we have any questions?
Yes, we have a couple that have come in. I just want to remind people, if you do have questions now, to just submit that to the questions box on the toolbar, and we'll get to as many of those questions as we can here in the remaining 10 minutes or so. One question was earlier in the presentation, I think one of the first slides you mentioned the phrase dollars per learner, and someone was just wondering if you could explain that a little bit more in detail and what you mean by that.
Yeah. If a company spends $10,000 on its employees learning in general, then how many trainers did they train, and you divide, or how many employees did they train, you divide that into the total amount they spent, and you get this number, dollars per learner. So if you spent $10 and you had 10 learners, your dollar per learner was a buck a person.
All right. Another question is, how should train-the-trainer programs be priced? Companies often want custom training programs to be taught 1 or 2 times and then want the material so they may train the rest of their staff.
Yeah, I would use the LERN financial formulas to price that just like I would everything else, and be sure that you do the market rate adjustment for what the client will pay. And I would emphasize, we have to let go of the idea that our clients should be using us to train everything. They just don't want to do it now. And so just think of it as a new product stream, and just let go of it. You can build it faster. You can build 3 change management courses. You don't need to worry about owning the material. I wouldn't go there. I would just say this is a contract. We're going to build it. We're going to use the LERN financial model to price it, and definitely being sure to adjust it for what the client will pay at the end, just like every other product we use.
If you could recommend some journals or professional magazines and books to read and research to follow the trends these days.
Yeah, training.com, Bears and Associates. I would just go back through the slide set when you get it after this presentation today and take a look at all of the research companies that I quoted in the slides.
And then are there any trends in compensation for the instructors that you're seeing these days?
You know, there are some trends, and I have to say it's nothing like a majority. It's still a tiny, tiny, tiny sliver of minority in compensation for instructors and also for salespeople. We're starting to just see some inkling of trends, but the data is kind of different enough in different places that I can't really benchmark it for you at this time.
All right, those are all the questions we have in right now. Is there any other questions anybody else has? Sometimes it takes a little time for the system to funnel them through, so we'll just give it another few seconds here. If we don't see anything, then I think we could probably wrap up.
For questions, Chris, this year's LERN conference is in San Francisco, and it's one of our all-time favorite locations for conferences. We often get a lot of people from the Midwest and the East at this conference because it's such a great travel destination, very affordable, and beautiful, you know, all the wine tours and all those things. So if you're thinking about going to that San Francisco conference, try to give yourself a couple of days there because probably be about 1,000 people at the conference, and about 300 or 400 of those people will stay in that area and have some fun there. So.
And we also do the August Off User Summit right before the conference. So
yeah,
you're
yeah.
An August user and a LERN member, it's a good combination package.
That's right.
I think the conference, somebody asked the dates on the conference, I believe it's like mid-November.
Yeah.
Like
if you learn.org, you'll see the conference dates. I think it's over on the right-hand side of the website.
Yep. Okay, well, it looks like those are all the questions we have today. So I think with that, we'll wrap it up. So again, Julia's got her contact information up on the screen there. And if anybody's also interested in learning more about Augisoft Lumens, we're more than happy to set you up a demo for that. You could just contact sales@augisoft.net for that. So Julia, thanks very much for taking the time today to present another great contract training trends presentation for us.
My pleasure, and I look forward to talking to everyone soon.
All right, well, with that, I think we'll sign off. So have a great day, everyone.
Bye-bye.